Sam has a 30-plus year history of utilizing critical participatory action research on the intersectionality of racial, cultural, economic, gender, environmental, and geographic justice. He has worked with and through formations from the grassroots level to state government, from community-based initiatives to those of national and international scope. Through organizing and development initiatives, he strives to improve the quality of life for people and transform structural patterns that impede mutual well-being. Sam is expanding rainbow research, a scope of work by bringing in work focused on environmental and climate justice. And outside of work, he is definitely involved in work in the community. So Sam is the executive director of Rainbow Research. And we are excited to have him back here with Midwest BDC. For those who may not know, he was one of our consultants. That's the famous word, you know? He was one of our consultants here at Midwest BDC to help us get our empowerment grant and re-granting program going in the beginning. So we have flourished. And by the way, it is live if you want to apply for an empowerment grant or a participation stipend. So go ahead and apply for those. For those who are new to Coalition, don't forget to sign up for our orientation, because that is one of the requirements to getting a participation stipend and empowerment grant. And just go read our blogs about people who received those empowerment grants in the last 3 years. They have done some really extraordinary work. But without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Sam Grant, Executive Director, Rainbow Research, and he will give our keynote today. So let's give him some praise in the chat. For those who are Zooming on Facebook Live, please give him some praise out there. All right, so I'm going to go behind the scenes.
Thank you, Marnice. Whoever is controlling the Zoom space, can you please give me access to share my screen?
Sam, you should be able to now. I made you a co-host.
Thank you very much. I see that I can do it. And I just want to begin by honoring a message from a Dagara elder, shaman, now ancestor, Sabunfe Some, who said, "Until you have been appropriately welcomed, you cannot arrive." And we have collectively arrived at a moment where we have to be more than we have been conditioned to be, not only within ourselves, but within all of our relationships, because it's movement time, y'all. It's time to recognize that the world as we have received it is not the world that's going to give us what fosters our safety, our well-being, or our collective wealth. So we have to stop allowing ourselves to sustain any practices of internalized oppression and dependency. And we have to truly move together to the vibration of mutual liberation. And I want to begin by saying a heartfelt thank you and blessings to your health to Owolabe for that amazing presentation and video that you produced. And I was so inspired by it. I sampled some shit from your shit, and it's right here on the first page, my brother. So it's collective power time, because the cost, of living is going up, and the chance of living is going down until we organize and take back our lives, our homes, our lands, our cultures, and our relationships. So these are all the ways that when we think about unleashing the power of collective action, these are all the things that we have to attend to. Take back our lives, which means stop being slaves. Take back our homes, which means when we see the spots that are substandard and vacant and bordered, we organize ourselves to fix them up. We don't wait on some external forces to be the resource force. We organize ourselves to build those capabilities. We recognize all the vacant land in our poor, oppressed communities, and we decide what's going to happen on that land base instead of letting the city council or the county or the state government limit our freedom and our power to determine what it makes sense to do with the land base in our communities. And all of that is cultural work. And all of that cultural work stems through relationships both within our cultures and across our cultures. So Marnise and I checked in briefly, a few weeks ago, just as, she asked me to come in and share some space with y'all. And among the things she asked me to think about are the things on this list here. Why do coalitions fail? How do we build power in a time of profound uncertainty? How do we link organizing in the public realm, in the private sector, in the community sector, and through social movements so they're all aligned for the purposes of the Midwest Building Decarbonization Coalition? What is your role? All of y'all who are here right now, what is your role in making this coalition as powerful as it can be? Which coalition priorities are you offering leadership on? Are you supported in that leadership role? Do you have what you need to lead powerfully? Are you bringing other people to the table with you? How are we sustaining the work and getting the results that our communities deserve and desire? We can't get there if we get stuck and stay inside the silos and let patterns of fragmentation continue to wreck our game. And we compete with all these different priorities. I got to do this work that's got jack to do with equity, and I got this work that's got a tiny bit to do with equity, and I got this work to do that's 100% about equity and racial justice and common liberation. In reality, we have to make a commitment to shift 100% of our energy towards what we trust is moving us towards liberation. And until we do that, we're going to stay stuck. As we move, we have to think about what's the dynamic between members and staff. Staff get overloaded. The coalition has, grown significantly. Marnise has built a powerful team around herself, and Marnise is powerful. But we need the members to be powerful in a way that too many of our formations in our states and in the world don't know how to be as powerful as we need to be. So we have to continue to dialogue about the mix of being member-led and staff implemented. What does that look like? How do we grow our capacity? And then I want to talk briefly at the end about, this form of power that we have to prioritize, which is transformative power, in order to really move the vision. So coalitions fail for all of the reasons on this list: lack of direction, conflicts, misalignment, poor coordination, inexperienced leadership, fragmentation, lack of commitment, burnout, unrealistic goals, and lack of education. And I want to put a particular emphasis on this notion of unrealistic goals. Liberation is not unrealistic, but we're conditioned to believe that we need to be more pragmatic than that. That's what's unrealistic, for us to be pragmatic, but liberation is what's required. Can I get an amen to that? So as I think about the work of the coalition, I want to say our safety, well-being, and wealth require transformative changes that the systems in their current form are incapable of delivering. It is only by unleashing the power of collective action at scale that we can realize climate justice in our communities. There's nobody over there that's going to bring justice and liberation to us. Who's going to bring liberation to us? If it ain't us, it's nobody. If it ain't us, it's nobody. Do we feel ready, willing, and able to be as powerful as we need to be? This is a profound question, and I don't want to rush past it. Eric did that meditation with us this morning, and I want to just take a minute and have you all go inside your own mind and heart and soul, and I want you to reflect on this question. How powerful do I feel like I am right now? And just allow yourself to breathe into that. And notice how much power you feel. And connect that to how powerful do you feel like we are right now as a coalition. I want to add one more question. If there was one thing that you knew you needed to do and that we needed to do to be more powerful, to unleash our power, to equitably decolonize decarbonization, what's that one thing that comes to you? And I want you to write it down, and I want you to hold it, put a date on it, and then I want you to think about when you're going to share it with the staff of the coalition. I want you to send them an email before the end of the conference today, before 3 o'clock Eastern time today. Send them what you wrote on that note. Because for us to be powerful, we each have to bring power to it. And it's by complementing each other with the form of power we can bring that we facilitate transformation together. Here are some realities. You know, I got on off and on because I'm at a conference in DC right now, but as I was looking at the chat, I noticed some things that y'all were putting in there, and I completely, you know, resonate with all of that. So we got folks living in substandard housing with cost burdens. We got vacant land and policies that block us from having community control. We got gentrification pressures. We got displacement pressures. We got dispossession happening all the time. We also got predatory inclusion, where, you know, Black folks and brown folks, you know, can get in on the game, but you're going to get in on the game at a higher cost with lower benefit. That's what predatory inclusion, you know, means. And then we also have all of these intersectional environmental injustices in our communities. We got the asthma triggers, we got the air pollution, we got the lead and other kinds of heavy metals in our soil. We got the lack of tree canopy. We got the schools that don't have all the resources to, you know, make sure our kids have equitable access to arts education. We don't have the community gardens or the urban farms. We don't have, farmers markets right in our neighborhoods. We don't have the jobs that pay living wages right in our neighborhoods. The transportation isn't designed for us to get to where the good jobs are. Most of us in our communities, or at least a third of us in our communities, don't have a car. If we own anything, we own it at a higher price, including our car insurance rates for living in these red line zip codes. And so people say redlining's in the past. I haven't seen that moment when redlining's in the past personally, y'all. So all of these things are real for us as we think about how we organize in the coalition. A good friend of mine who was doing a lot of good organizing with the indigenous people up in Canada, in the northern part of Turtle Island, wrote, her dissertation, and she came up with these 8 points. And there's a link to it at the bottom of my PowerPoint. And I'll send the PowerPoint to Marnice and her team, and they'll forward it on to all of you. So I don't have to worry about getting this, because I know I'm talking a little fast, because I just got 20 minutes with y'all, and I want to use the time well. So number one, to change the system, we need to understand the system, and we need to think in systems. There are many kinds of change, and it is helpful to know exactly what kind of change you are working to bring about. There are multiple stages of change processes, and different stages call for different stages and agents, different strategies and agents. We have to pay attention to the material things we want to win, and we also have to pay attention to our ideas, our identities, our stories, and our emotions as we strategize. There are many approaches to making change, and we need to think about adding them up instead of saying, that's not what makes sense to me. Instead of me doing that, my question ought to be, how does what you do complement what I want to do? And how does what I want to do complement what you're doing? And let's figure out that complementarity, which is based on African liberation philosophy. It is important to think about, as we fight with all of our might and we don't get the change we want, we have to understand why we didn't secure change. We have to understand all of the ways systems work very elegantly and violently to prevent us from realizing justice. It's a brother who back in the 1990s wrote this important piece called "We Have No Leaders," and it was a critique of the post-civil rights era. And he talked about 5 ways that systems of oppression respond to us when we fight for liberation. When we don't have an organized base, they ignore us. When we build an organized base, they feel threatened by us and they repress us. When repression doesn't cause us to fall back to total silence, then they figure out how to co-opt some of us. So they buy some of us off to control the rest of us and keep the plantation shuffle going. When that doesn't work, they'll give us a holiday, Juneteenth, Martin Luther King, something like that. Name some roads after some of our leaders, stuff like that. And when that doesn't work, Then they'll give us some substantive incorporation, which some of us get tricked to believing is enough, like passing the 1968 Fair Housing Act that didn't have any enforcement mechanisms. Come on, y'all. Come on. We got to fight until we win. And we can't let anything stop us until we feel it in all of our relationships. Did we win, y'all? Did we win, y'all? Did we win, y'all? Until all of us say we won, we haven't won yet. You feel me? All right, I'll keep going. What's the biggest gap? The biggest gap, I would say, is organizing. Coalition now has a bigger staff. That's progress. But we need to think about what's our evolution in terms of building our capacity to organize within and across all of the states that are part of the coalition. And not only do we have to organize, we have to link organizing to social movement building, because we have social movements that are fighting for particular objectives, and they have to be heard, and they have to be included, and they have to drive what is shaping what we're organizing for within our community formations and in our regional formations. So we'll talk more about that later. I'll meet with Marnice and others later to talk about, building up the organizing platform, because I really think we got to get there. There are many forms of uncertainty that are sort of right there in front of us right now. There's the political uncertainty of what's going to happen in this next election, and then what the ripple effect is that going to be at the state level, at the county level, at the city level. There's the economic uncertainty. But some things are certain, right? Because people know, even with the Inflation Reduction Act, people's cost of living is going up and their chance of living is going down. If you live in one of our environmental justice zip codes, you live 11 years less. And while you're living, you have a whole lot higher stress and many, many forms of trauma that's always kind of cycling through your community and doing what Dr. Mindy Fuller called that root shock. You think you finally, made it somewhere, and then all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you and you're back at ground zero again after having been there infinite numbers of times already. And everybody around you is exhausted just like you. And we feel like, I can't hold you up right now, bro, because I'm also down, right? So we got to deal with that. And then there's the ecological uncertainties of which communities are going to be flooded next, which communities are going to have the drought next, which communities are going to lose all they got next. In our communities, the environmental justice communities, we don't have the resources right now to protect ourselves from the climate crisis. So part of what the Decarbonization Coalition has to do is make sure that we're boosting the resilience of the communities that are most vulnerable to the climate crisis. And we got to do it right now. And then there's also the social and the cultural forms of uncertainty that we have to face. So in the 8-state region, what is the Decolonizing and Equitable Decarbonization Power Platform? And how is it organized in each state and coordinated across our states? How are we organizing and advancing a BIPOC equitable decarbonization business network that leads the work both in our own communities, but then in the regions as a whole? And how are we hiring folks from within our own communities to be the boots on the ground that are carrying out all the work, regardless of where the work happens? So we're building wealth while we're addressing the climate crisis. We can't wait for anybody else to do it. Y'all know that. And then how are we building bases in our communities of the most affected, so that they're leading with us and they're helping us do all of these things that we got to do. Got an election coming up, so I'm guessing a lot of y'all got caught up in the inside game, which is working on making sure that we don't let Trump, become the guy again, because, he wrecked a lot of stuff when he was in before. But we have to recognize that whatever we secure through the inside game isn't addressing these things that y'all have put in the chat already. Whether Democrat or Republican, they're not doing anything or nothing sufficiently to address gentrification, or to address the long history of dispossession that's already been hurting us across generations, right? We have to step up and we have to organize our power bases and be creative, like Owolabe said, and generate the future we want for ourselves. Self-determination is the key to collective determination. Self-determination is the key to collective determination. We have to braid Kujichagulia with Ujima. Those two things together is the key to Ujamaa, which is the cooperative economics, honoring the purpose, and using our creativity, our kuumba, to realize the destiny of liberation. So while we do inside game, We have to always drive inside game by outside game. A mistake we make that we have to stop making is we fight from the outside to get on the inside. Once we're on the inside, we turn off the outside game, and the outside game has to be running the entire game. Maybe you have some questions about that. How are we engaging and involving the assets within and across all our communities? How are we building the capabilities of our members to lead the coalition with the support of the staff? These are questions we got to have ongoing dialogue about. And at the end of the day, here's my question. What do coalitions need to do to build transformative power? Many of us have got in the game of inclusion, and inclusion is level 0 work, getting a seat at the table. That facilitates reform work, which allows us to challenge the notion that there's only one way to do things. And we begin to open up the sense that there's more than one way to do things in order to address the diverse objectives of peoples in communities. And then that opens up the space for a true conversation about equity, which I call just transition work 1.0. But once we get to that, then we get to the real question, which is transformative power. We have to have transformative power because of what I said at the beginning and what Owolabi showed in his brief, creative presentation to us. We are not living in a context that can facilitate liberation. We have to create that context that facilitates liberation and work that through the coalition. So there's 6 organizing principles I'll close with. A couple minutes past time. I apologize for that. So I won't read them. They're just here, and you'll get the PowerPoint. So I want you to think about how we embody, embrace, and lead with all of these so that we get to liberation. What's our vision for 10 years out, 25 years out? How are we describing and designing the pathway to get there? And then how are we resourcing and organizing the path to get there? Fam, it's time to organize. Let's go. Time for any questions, Marnice?
Hey. Well, I'm sure we have plenty of questions. I got one in it. And everybody, before we go there, yes, come on, Kwanzaa. Yes. So hold on. We do have some questions in the chat. And I'm pretty sure we have some comments. So just a second. Okay. Let me see. Chat. So what does Paula ask, can you repeat what predatory inclusion means again?
Yeah. Dr. Henry Louis Taylor, who was a famous professor organizing up in Buffalo, New York, has a daughter who's also now famous and written award-winning books, Keonga Yamada Taylor, and she wrote a book called Race for Profit. And she defines in her book, Race for Profit, which came out in 2019, this notion of predatory inclusion. So predatory inclusion is what created the foreclosure crisis and the fact that took away a lot of Black wealth in 2007 through 2009. Predatory inclusion is giving Black communities loans at a higher price. So this idea of risk-based lending is what predatory inclusion is about.
And we have Dr. Ford who like to ask a question, and I'm gonna allow him to speak and come on. Okay, Dr. Ford, you're able to speak and ask you to unmute yourself. I think you're here. So you're off mute now, so you're able to speak.
I really didn't have a question. I certainly enjoyed your presentation because it is so apropos to everything that is happening right now in our country. And so I hope everybody listened closely and gained all that you were saying, because it is so apropos to everything that's happening. And it will help us in the coalition as well as in our lives and in the decisions and things that we make now. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you, Apostle Dr. Fred. I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate you for all the ways you're leading. And I would be remiss if I didn't say this out loud for everybody. We have an amazing Harriet Tubman leading us named Marnice Jackson. And she doesn't always give herself cred for the way she leads, but we are following and working with a Black queen of extreme capacity, love, and power. And I'm delighted to follow and support your leadership, Queen.
Okay, so look, I really appreciate that. Harriet Tubman, though, I'm not there. I'm not there. I do. I'm just not there. But I appreciate that. I know my role in this movement, but Mama Harriet Tubman, woo, God gonna have to do some work on me to get there.
Well, you know what, Marnice, God had to do some work on me, because when you asked me to do this, I really had to, like really, some presentations you just kind of show up and do it. But I had to really meditate on what can I say that's useful to Sister Marnice as she leads this movement. So I really had to put some care and sweat into it. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna act up and get teary-eyed up because I'm almost there. But and everybody, thank you for the hearts and the claps. I appreciate that. Get it together, Marnies. I'm just gonna say this. I really did appreciate your words because I do align with a lot where I believe in as far as the political cycle that we're in. As a leader of a 501c3, I will encourage everyone to get out to vote and register. We only got so much time. Vote based on your value system and for democracy. And that's all I can ask for, because that's what I'm voting for. Not that I agree with either party, but as a 501c3, we are nonpartisan organization, and we have to make sure that we're staying in compliance legally. However, if you follow me on social media, you'll get a glimpse of who I'm voting for. So, because I want this work to continue. I care about Black, Brown, Indigenous, low income, people of color, the work that we're doing. We want this to continue to, so if y'all know where I'm getting at, y'all know who to vote for. And it's really important that we have to think about sustainability. And I'm so glad that you put all of that in those slides, because we have to take a step back and not be so reactionary. Like, the framework is there, right? We just have to lean into it and not be so scared to try something different. Because we have seen it. We have 6 generations that are alive. So we have to just sit back, take wisdom from all the generations, and just take a note of all the social movements that are happening. So I can't tell you had a hard time, but we have another question in the chat. Lena, can you say the outside game thing again? How do we support ourselves from the inside? Sorry, she didn't hear what you said, but that was awesome. Yeah, repeat that.
Thank you, Lena. So the point I was making is that we get hoodwinked during election cycles of focusing on what we can win given who's in office right now, who's the best candidate, right? And what I was saying is that our organizing comes from us, and that has to be driving what we do in those inside game cycles. So we have to have an organizing platform, the marching orders we give ourselves, and we have to stay true to that. The integrity of what we design in terms of our platform for equitable, decolonizing, decarbonization, stay true to that 100%, regardless of who's in political space, regardless of what funding is available to us right now, because staying true to that is the key to continuing to move society towards the vibration of liberation.
Okay.
Outside game drives all game. And what do I mean by outside game? Outside game is the truth of our people. The truth of our people is the guide. And we can't have the truth of our people if we're not organizing, listening, and fostering coherence.